Today we're having a peek at House of Darkness. It hit theaters around September 2022. It was directed by Neil Labute. It stars Justin Long, Kate Bosworth, Gia Cravatin, and Lucy Walters for around 29 seconds. I've been meaning to get around to this one for a while. How come? Because vampires, and Bram Stoker's Dracula references, and Justin Long. And now that I've seen it, spoiler alert, this movie is not what I was anticipating at all. Does that mean we need to submit director Neil Labute to the procession of shame?
Shame.
Because if you don't already know, he's also the guy responsible for the Nick Cage version of The Wicker Man that we don't talk about around here. Does it also mean I should stop with the endless compliments where Justin Long is concerned? These and many other questions popped into my head as I was watching House of Darkness. So let's go get ourselves some answers. Here is a quick plot summary. There might be some sarcasm.
As the movie opens, we meet Hap Jackson and Mina Murray, played by Justin Long and Kate Bosworth, respectively. The pair met each other in a bar earlier that same night, and Hap's volunteered to drive her home. And as a guy that's never been married, I get all nervous and blurt things out on first dates. And if I'd have drove Kate Bosworth home instead of Justin Long, I'd have been all like,
well, here we are.
You were kidding when you said it was out in the middle of nowhere, huh?
Right, I told you.
You sure did. What was that?
Nothing, it's just the wind.
Well, in that case, I should probably get you to the hospital immediately. It sounds like the wind just tore your asshole apart.
They spend close to the first 10 minutes of the movie outside Mina's mansion of a home doing an awkward back and forth. And not the typical awkward back and forth between two normal people entering into a potentially romantic situation. It's that other kind of awkward, where no matter what he says or how politely he says it, she twists it just enough to imply he was actually saying something else and then forces him to defend himself. And it's just as fun to watch as those times you're at a close friend's house for dinner and they get into a fist fight with their spouse at the dinner table. It's enough to put you off a movie completely and maybe even off dating, depending on your tolerance for these kind of things. But at least it's only like that for the opening 10 minutes.
What?
When they eventually get inside the cavernous Gothic castle, Hap immediately sees somebody lurking in the darkness. But Mina explains it away as the house is old and full of memories. When the power goes out a minute later, she assures him it happens all the time and she puts a fire on to keep them cozy. And while she's getting the fire stoked, the jagged conversation continues. And Hap answers all of her accusations rather honestly and with humor. And while he's answering her, Mina observes him the way a seasoned psychiatrist might look at Josef Fritzl. As a brief respite from the dialogue, Mina eventually heads off to make them both a drink. But before she leaves, she tells Hap her family has several of these big homes scattered around the country. So naturally, Hap rejoices in the idea his new girl's gorgeous and rich, because that's what anyone in his situation would do.
And if you think his behavior so far has been inappropriate or toxic, I'm guessing you and I wouldn't get along very well at a barbecue.
And whilst she's away, Hap's friend from the bar calls to find out where he's ended up. And their conversation's so poorly written, I'm starting to miss the unbearable banter the story opened up with. And that worked out really well for me because when Mina returns with the drinks, the cumbersome chit-chat slips into an even higher gear. Mina questions every statement from Hap and goes on to question every response to her questions. The tight camera angles go back and forth between them, making it very difficult to settle into the conversation, which in turn makes it very hard to engage with the movie. The verbal volleyball continues until things eventually get intimate. Mina bites his lip so hard it bleeds, and then when it looks like he's heading to second base...
Or was that third base? I was never very good at baseball. What I meant by that was I was so accustomed to hitting home runs all the time, I had no idea about the individual bases.
They're rudely interrupted by Mina's sister Lucy, and when Hap jumps up startled and asks Mina why she lied about them being alone in the house, Mina denies lying, so Hap apologizes to her. For those of you paying attention who might have picked up on the Dracula reference with the sisters being named Lucy and Mina, don't hold out for that to have any relevance later in the story.
The only thing I can figure Neil Labute is trying to say here is that Hap was too stupid to pick up on the names, as if they should be some kind of automatic red flag for your average everyday person. And if that is what he was getting at, good one.
Mina leaves again to get everyone another drink, so Sister Lucy, played by Gia Crovatin, opens the proverbial hymn book Mina was singing from, and she starts speaking to him the exact same way. But fortunately, it doesn't last as long, as she heads off to check on her sister after a few minutes. And when she does, the far more patient and tolerant than I Hap dozes off. Or somebody puts something in his drink. It's never really explained. While he's out, he has a dream which may have been a premonition of things to come, or a warning for him to get out. But that's never explained either. In the dream/premonition/warning, he finds himself tied up in a chair in an underground stone cavern. When he eventually works himself free from the chair, he walks past a small pile of men's shoes, presumably from those who came before him. Then he breaks his knee attempting to escape. When he wakes up, he finds Lucy sitting next to him on the couch, and again, if you're thinking the cutaway to the underground cavern was the setup to a later payoff, you'd be disappointed because it's never referenced again either. Lucy offers to take Hap on a tour of the vast property as Mina's still away getting drinks. The pair end up out on a balcony where the grating conversation continues to inspire me to see if there's anything interesting on my phone. She accuses him of driving her sister home drunk, and he immediately admits to it. Then she accuses him of speaking in a very suggestive tone, and he admits to that too. And right when the dialogue's about to make me push the fuck off button on my Fire Stick remote, Lucy offers to tell him a ghost story. But before she's had a chance to start, Mina returns with more drinks. And she's been gone so long, I kind of forgot about her. And again, the stilted sisters bombard him with accusations and subtle insults before he's invited back into the living room where they all agree to share ghost stories. And despite making it clear he doesn't know any ghost stories, and even if he did, he'd be terrible delivering one, the girls force him to make one up, so Hap obliges. And for reasons best known to director and writer Neil Labute, he has Hap make up a story about taking both sisters to bed that night. And it's the sort of story nobody in Hap's situation would ever recite, even if it was a joke. And of course, nobody laughs because there's no humor in a suggestion like that. And as there's only 20 minutes left in this supposed horror movie and nothing scary's happened yet, Lucy finally launches into her own ghost story. And if you thought there's no frickin' way she's going to explain what we all figured out 16 minutes into this frickin' movie, you, my friend, would be wrong. In a blunt, non-surprising, non-eloquent manner, she tells Hap her and Mina are very old vampires who hate men because they did terrible things to them hundreds of years ago. And with less than 10 minutes to go in the movie now, a third sister named Nora materializes out of nowhere. And at last, our friend Hap has finally had enough. So he tries leaving, but they won't let him. And then Mina bites a pancake-sized lump out of his neck, and they all sink their teeth into him, and that's that.
And there you have it, folks, the plot to House of Darkness. Now, if you've been around the channel at all recently, you know it's been a very up and down time for horror movies. I try my best to be balanced, but I am aware I've been shitting on a lot of films lately. And I definitely don't want to build up a reputation as one of those guys that constantly shits on everything. Do I, Mikey? So I'm going to try and be more precise about exactly what works for me and what doesn't.
You don't need me to tell you how to enjoy a movie, and I'm not trying to do that now. What I am doing is telling you the way I see them through my own lens. And for me, a good movie has a compelling, fast-paced storyline conveyed by well-acted, memorable characters reciting intriguing dialogue over a backdrop of captivating visuals. And if you can manage to throw in a well-thought-out soundtrack and a theme to get me thinking, all the better. Having said that, Despite the dialogue, Neil Labute created an interesting opening to House of Darkness by dropping us into the middle of a situation most of us can relate to. Some people have only ever been on one first date. Other people have never gotten past the first date. But wherever you are on that spectrum, you can probably remember that tickly tension in your tummy, and that's a great way to pull your audience into a story. Now, don't get me wrong, that opening tension dissipated pretty quickly once the proverbial penny dropped, but credit where credit is due. It was an effective hook. The settings in this movie reflected the title, albeit in a fairly condensed fashion. For those of you who don't know, Neil Labute is a prolific playwright, and that makes sense when you think about the limited set pieces in House of Darkness. You can easily see this story being told on a stage, and it might have made more sense to do it that way. In terms of acting, I can't fault anybody. Justin Long did exactly what he was hired to do in his portrayal of the daft, single-minded 30-something out looking for exactly what all daft 30-somethings look for after the bar. And Kate Bosworth was also proficient in terms of delivering her lines and maintaining a steady veil of mystery and intrigue. The fact she maintained the exact same tone and expression throughout the entire film isn't something I hold against her. It wasn't her idea. She'd be directed to do that. So, as far as acting goes, I have no complaints. Having said that, introducing Mina's sisters to this story ultimately changed nothing. They all acted identically to each other. They had no differentiating features or mannerisms or speech patterns. They had no individual motivations or conflicts with each other. On paper, for all intents and purposes, they were the same character. In a well-written movie, the characters are the heart of the story. They bring the film to life by making it relatable and engaging for us in the audience. When it's done properly, they are developed and multi-dimensional because they have to be. Kate Bosworth's Mina was completely undeveloped. After paying very close attention, sometimes, I couldn't tell you anything about her, and both of her sisters were carbon copies. If this was intentional or ironic or some kind of metaphor, I certainly didn't pick up on it. As for the storyline, the plot's meant to provide a framework to keep the audience engaged by presenting us a series of escalating events that generate ever-growing tension. That's eventually supposed to lead us to a satisfying conclusion. And with my minimal understanding of plots, I don't see this movie even really had one. Justin Long's character met a girl in a bar. She asked him for a ride home. Aside from the alcohol issue, he did nothing any other guy in his position wouldn't have done. In fact, he was far more honest and forthcoming than I would have been in that scenario, and then they killed him. And once again, just like with the characters, if Neil Labute's toyed with traditional plot structure as a statement or to achieve some kind of artistic effect, to quote the late great Gordon Edgar Downey, it's so deep it's meaningless.
And given he was responsible for the version of the Wicker Man we don't talk about here, I'm gonna hazard a guess and suggest I'm not just struggling to understand the works of an artistic genius.
So, should you watch House of Darkness, or should you drop it off in the driveway and wish it a good night before it starts a fucking conversation with you?
If a movie misses the mark on one or two elements, most of us are happy enough to give it a pass if we got a laugh out of it, or if the action scenes were enthralling, or if the jump scares weren't entirely predictable. But when none of your boxes are ticked, it's really hard to recommend that kind of a movie to somebody else, as is sort of my self-appointed job here. So, I'll say it like this. If you happen to find yourself flaked out on the couch on a Sunday afternoon and you have no other pressing plans and House of Darkness appears on the TV screen in front of you, let it play. But if you have to part with a single penny of your own hard-earned money to watch this movie, don't. The more we continue to support these kind of movies, the more they're going to keep making them. And remember, it must be bad if I'm talking like this about a movie with Justin Long in it. Just saying. Until next time, folks. It's me, Johnny, from that thing you just watched. If you enjoyed it, go down there and smash me in the face to subscribe. And if you want to watch another thing, there's one right there. Do it!